We're rolling with Dr. K. Dr. K. 100 shades of diversibilities every day. We're rolling with Dr. K. Oh, Dr. K. 100 shades of diversibilities every day. Ah, yeah, we're rolling.
And we want to say thank you so much for tuning in on today. Today's the last day for that theme song. We did 12. Today is the 12th show of Get Out the Vote. Yes, we did them consecutively and even did Mondays. Yes, I was here yesterday. Can you believe it? Now I'm going to go take a break. But today is voting day. There's approximately 4 hours exactly to get to the polls. So if you have not voted yet, please, please, please get there. I am so excited to have this conversation. We've been talking for almost a month about today with the captain of the Grand Rapids Police Department, Ms. Cathy Williams. Yes. And
Hello.
we want to welcome Dave back. He started out with show 1 and now he's back on show 12.
It's been a wild 3 months. I'll just say that. So
I definitely can say the same thing, and just ready for all the victory parties. And I have truly, truly been rolling with all of the candidates and having all these wonderful photo ops. Man, I ended up on everybody's Instagram. I was on the governor's Instagram. I was on Alyssa Slotkin's Instagram. I ended up on Kyra Harris Bolden's Instagram. So I've been rolling since August.
And of course, those are they're just statements of fact, not advocacy, because 830 and 5, we are a nonpartisan organization. So that being said, Cathy Williams,
thanks for joining. But 100 shades, see, that's why he could really participate in all of the shows, because that is 100 Shades of Diversibility's mission, is to improve the quality of life for persons with diverse abilities and their families, legislatively, economically, through community partnerships and education. And so we will tell you who is good and who is not good, those who are doing their job and need a little help with their job. But, we do what we do. We want to say thank you to Michelle Childs, who is tuned in watching us today. And we want to say thank you to all of those who rolled with us for 12 consecutive shows, with one of the shows being, and you can find it on YouTube, it was on the 18th of October, where there was a rally with about five governors, along with our governor of Michigan, that came here to rally with Vice President Kamala Harris. And if you watch the video to the end, you'll actually see me shaking the vice president's hand. So that was show number 10.
Uh-oh. Nobody told me that, Dr. Kimberly.
Yeah. It was show number 9 or 10. And today makes show number 12. And we are talking about our wonderful, wonderful police department, who have put together some wonderful safety precautions for today. We know that tensions are kind of high about who folks want to get elected and what's at stake. And I love the fact that, and I'm just going to say this out loud, Dave, close your ears, that we have a woman who is the police captain, and she's being proactive instead of reactive.
I am all in favor.
So,
yeah. People, gender is irrelevant, but we digress.
Well, I hope, Dr. Kimberly, that even though that you do promote who you feel is doing your job, I hope at the end of this hour, you can say that you feel confident that the Grand Rapids Police Department is doing their job and doing it well. So that's my goal today.
You know what? I can already tell you, we have this system in place. It's 1 through 5, and it's called rolling stars. With 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. You definitely get a 5 with the work that you did with the Faith in Blue. It's awesome. For those of you who do not know, it is a national effort for churches and the police department to get together and hold. It's like a 3 to 4 day weekend. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and a Monday, and they come together so that the community, especially Black and Brown, aren't afraid of the police, and they don't think that everything is always being antagonistic, but that they really do care, and you get an opportunity to see them up close and personal. I think every department, including the sheriff's department, was there.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up, Dr. Kimberly. That's an initiative that was started in 2019, really at the height of those tensions between the police department and our nation, really, especially in communities of Black and Brown. And so Faith in Blue was started. We jumped on board right away, and each year we've kind of grown in our involvement. And this year we really went all out with one church in particular, but that's just because they were such a catalyst in the community, and they really wanted to go big and to show the community how it can be done. And so thank you for bringing that up. I feel really good about that, the progress that we made throughout that weekend and those series of events. So thank you.
It was awesome. That helped me to have faith for today. They started with a basketball game on Friday. So these young Black boys played basketball against the Grand Rapids Police Department. Imagine that.
Yeah.
And the police department lost.
We did. But you know what? You know what the beautiful thing about it is at first people are like, "Ooh, how's this going to go?" Because some of these young men had been arrested before. Some of them may have been arrested by the police officers that they played against, and so people were questioning, "Ooh, how's this going to go? How's this going to play out?" You watch them out there, the officers, the young men, they were picking each other up off the floor. They were high-fiving. It was a pickup game of basketball, and it was in good fun and good spirit. And so there were no problems whatsoever. And it really showed the community that it doesn't have to be just about us versus them, right? It's not about the law enforcement just arresting people. We can work together, and we believe in them that they can do something different with their life. And so that event was really about a show of that it can be more than that. And police officers aren't here just to arrest people. So really that was one of our goals for that. There was a lot of goals that day, but that was one of the biggest goals for that basketball event. So that was day 1. Day 2, we went into a community-wide crime prevention and awareness fair. So we had all kinds of organizations throughout the city. Obviously some churches were involved. Again, those Grace Boys and women from Pilgrim Rest were there, and it was beautiful. So again, we're being proactive rather than reactive with crime and educating and getting resources out there. So we just didn't want any vendor or any table out there. We wanted people to come, vendors and tables that really spoke to the people that came. So what do they want? What do they need? What's their life like, and what could they really use at this crime prevention and resource fair? So we had about a dozen, maybe 15 tables, and I think that each table had something to give to the people that came. So we taught people how to get driver's licenses if they needed to do that. We gave away light bulbs. We taught people how to secure their property and not be a victim of theft. We had our traffic unit was there, and we did like this drunk driving simulator to prevent.
Oh, that was funny.
Yeah, that was funny. Pastor Gaddy joined in on that one. I had my son do that one as well. I was like, okay, here you go. This is what it's like. Don't ever do it, right? So we're trying to get ahead of that, before someone's a victim or before someone commits that crime. How can they take a sidestep and prevent that from even happening? So that was the goal of that day. That was just the 2 of 4, but it was a beautiful day. I don't mean to steal your thunder for the time we're talking today regarding voting, but the whole weekend was just beautiful.
But this helps us to be a great segue so people understand, the faith that I have in the Grand Rapids Police Department and wanting to have harmony. And then on Sunday, everyone that was there on Saturday attended a church service together at Pilgrim Rest. And the men and women in blue were honored, as well as those who have served. Everyone was given a certificate. It was awesome. And then it culminated that Monday with a luncheon held at, it's slipping my
ICCF.
brain.
ICCF, yeah. That
Yep.
beautiful atrium that they have with the big glass ceiling. It was gorgeous in there. I think you could do weddings in there, really.
I think you could.
I think you could.
So we've been rolling a lot, being engaged in the community so that, we have these conversations and we can bring everyone back here to the platform so that, again, to be educated, creating those community partnerships.
I'm so glad you brought that up because it really does segue nicely into today in voting and democracy, right? So when we met Monday, we talked about unity. We talked about, as Americans or as members of our society, Grand Rapidians, what do we have in common, right? How can we unite? What can we focus on so we're not divisive and we can live in harmony and we can live, symbiotically. And so that was the message on Monday when we had our luncheon was what can we focus on that brings us together? And I know this time of year, every 4 years when we have this presidential election, our country seems very, very divided. And although we have our own opinions on who we want to be president or what policy we believe in or whatever, really, we have to focus on putting that aside, I should say. We are still all Americans. We all are living here together, and we all need to get along in the best way we know how, right? So voting, you're right, it's very emotional. The election's very emotional. People are charged up, right? But we still have to stay within those boundaries so that we can keep everyone safe and we can all enjoy living in our community and thriving in our community, even if we are happy or sad about the outcome of the election.
We have a comment. Michelle Child says, hello, all of you. I just helped my 82-year-old disabled dad vote in Southfield, Michigan, precinct 16. I would have been helping out at District 12 in Kentwood. Thank you. And thank you, Cathy Williams, for keeping us safe. And we want to say thank you to Lorraine Sanders for tuning in.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what is happening today? From your perspective, Captain Williams, and how I got all kinds of questions that are more, I don't say historical in nature, about the campaign and when candidates come to Grand Rapids in the middle of the night or on a Friday afternoon in a park. But we'll get to those. But more importantly, today, as Dr. Kimberly said, we often forget that most of Michigan, we close polls at 8 p.m. Eastern time, but there's a few counties in the far western UP that are in central time zone. So that's why they can't declare Michigan on national media till 9 p.m. Eastern, because some of Michigan's still voting. The western UP goes way west. But anyways,
you think Dave will be done at 9? You think they'll declare at 9 o'clock? I said, what's your vote? You think we're going to declare at 9 o'clock?
No. I mean, in the sense that, because how many votes will actually get counted? They people got burned. I was reminiscing last night with my wife about 2000. I was in Commissioner Jim Talon's house in Heritage Hill, and the national media declared Florida for Vice President Gore, for those of us who were alive in 2000. And then like an hour later, they said, well, maybe not. And then, of course, the very famous or infamous Supreme Court decision, Gore v. Bush. That being said, but it was peaceful. It was just a lot of weird counting and hanging chads and all that, right? Fast forward 24 years later. And yeah, it just seems that the vibe on the street is just a little more tense. So, well, before we get to
he's already made a statement after he voted in Florida. I was watching the news live, and he's already upset about the way the ballots are done. He doesn't agree.
Yep.
And he doesn't think that they should be done via the computer, that it should be just paper, and that this is nonsense. And this is something that he's going to change, when he becomes president, is how the ballots are counted, and they're just going to be paper.
And we forget that according to the U.S. Constitution, each state sets its own rules. But we digress. But that being said, before we really dive into it, Captain Williams, can you give us a 38-second bio? Are you, like, where you grew up? Why did you get into police work? You're a captain, so you must have been doing it for more than a year or two. So just no disclosure of age is required. We're just wondering, just like who you are, because again, Dr. Kimberly's already given great endorsement of you and your work and the whole department's work, but a little more personal for 38 seconds. Go.
38 seconds.
Oh,
wow.
As much time as you need.
Okay, Dr. Kimberly knows me. She knows I can't say a sentence in 38 seconds. So, but I'll do my. I'll try to be. I can't. I'm
Your
not.
30 seconds is up. What?
I know, right? Okay, I was born in Lansing. That's where I grew up. I went to high school there, and I then went to Ferris, where I studied criminal justice. And
Go Bulldogs.
I'm a Go Bulldog. Yeah, Go Bulldogs. And Grand Rapids is my first police job. So I've been with Grand Rapids for 24 years, and I've been a captain for 2 years. And so what that means, what a captain rank, what that does is I'm responsible for a service area. So the city's broken up into 5 service areas, north, south, east, and west. And then we have a central district or service area rather, that is right in the heart of the city. So the whole downtown zone, that's the central service area, but I'm responsible for the south service area. So essentially the boundaries move a little bit, but everything south of Wealthy over to East Grand Rapids, down to Hall, and then over to the Black Hills. So it's a short and wide service area, but it's predominantly 3rd Ward. It does touch all 3 wards, but predominantly 3rd Ward. So I've been doing that for 2 years, and basically as the captain of the South Service area, I'm responsible for everything that happens here, all the patrol officers, and any crime that happens here, any prevention efforts, any events, good, bad, ugly. I have to own that. That's on me.
Well, all right. So, so you're basically saying, because I live 10 houses north of Wealthy Street, and the new Robinson Road is going to become a speedway. I got to talk to a different. Oh my goodness! I got to talk to a different captain about some speed enforcement on the new Robinson Road, because it's a beautiful. Oh, I mean, it's not finished yet, and people are already doing 45 into 25, and I'm not exaggerating. But enough about me. Back to, okay, here we are on election day. You've been out again. Your job is, I'm just going to guess, stressful enough, and now we have an election where the vibe on the street just seems like people are going to go to fisticuffs over this stuff.
Well,
so what's happening out there?
Okay. Well, that's a lot to unpack there. So today, obviously, it's voting day, right? It's November 5th. The polls are open until 8 o'clock tonight. If my math is correct, there's 74 voting locations today. 23 in the 1st ward, 25 in the 2nd ward, and 26 in the 3rd ward. So spread out throughout the entire city, open till 8 o'clock. There's also those ballot drop boxes. So not only can you go in person, but you can drop your ballot until 8 o'clock. So at 8 o'clock, all 11 of those ballot drop boxes will be collected, and the Grand Rapids Police Department will staff each one of those ballot boxes to guard them while they're emptied. And then we will escort each of those boxes to City Hall, where they're taken to some locked, secured room to make sure that they safely make it there and nothing happens to those ballots. So that's the first line of defense there is to making sure that those ballots actually make it safely to where they're supposed to go. But again, there's going to be uniformed officers at each of those drop ballot boxes, not all day, just at collection time. If you are in line by 8 o'clock, you will get to vote. So if you are in line to drop your ballot at the box, you will get a chance to put it in the box. And if you're at the polling station by 8 o'clock, you will get a chance to cast your vote. So that's the most important thing. You said 8 o'clock and then declaring it at 9. That's not going to happen. We all know that. So setting realistic expectations is important too, for everyone's sanity. But so that's that. As far as the 74 different polling locations, we are not staffing as the Grand Rapids Police Department. We are not staffing all 74 of those locations. As a matter of fact, we are not present at any of those locations. And there's a whole list of reasons why we should or why we should not. But we simply don't have, even if we wanted to, the staffing to put an officer at every polling location. But instead, there's other safeguards in place to make sure that those days run smoothly. The day runs smoothly, and I'm sure you're going to want to get into those. What are those safeguards? What does the city, the county, the state, the federal government, what safeguards do they put in place so that everyone gets an opportunity to safely vote today?
We are doing station identification. It is now 21 minutes after the hour, and we want to say thank you so much for tuning in to Rolling on the Road to Victory. Michigan is a swing state, and as of a week ago, it has been determined that Michigan will determine who is the president of the United States. We have been courted for months, and we've had even the Obamas have been here. Oprah has been here, and how exciting this time has been. I can't even count the number of times that the vice president has come along with her selection for her vice president has come. I've had the opportunity to see everybody come through here during this time. It has been busy. And I want to say thank you for all of you who have rolled through 12 shows. This is now the 12th show. If you are watching via GRTV 25, today is the election day. It is November 5th of 2024. Where I believe this will be president number 47. Is that correct? That we will be choosing on today. So please be safe. We have had more than enough shows, more than enough opinions and thoughts about what you could do today. We learned that you can vote for less, but not for more on your ticket. And that it's important that you elect your local officials up to your state representatives, because they are the ones who are going to make the decisions based on your day-to-day life, and to vote for those who best mirror your daily living values. And whatever that looks like for you has been suggested on how you should vote. And we are grateful for all of you who have during the show have let us know that you did the early voting. Some of you did early voting. Some of you did absentee ballots. Thank you. You've inboxed me. You've texted me. You've tweeted me to let me know that, hey, Dr. Kim, I voted. Thank you. That we've learned that it's our rights, it's our responsibility, that it's a privilege to be able to get out and vote. We thank you. We thank you so much that when we wake up on tomorrow, we believe that we're going to still have some democracy. Yep. And yesterday we talked about Project 2025. It was a very good conversation. Oh, and there's Dr. Thurston Willoughby. He said he voted today. Thanks for getting the word out. Absolutely. He was on for at least half of the shows. Yes. And I appreciate it. And the half that he wasn't on live, he went back and watched the replay and he let me know. So thank you. I appreciate you. I thank you for the support. I want to say thank you to, oh my goodness, the Church of God in Christ, the National Church of God in Christ. We had the state supervisor from Michigan jurisdiction number 2 and number 3 have been watching the shows, have been getting out the word, and let me know that they have voted. They have been so supportive. These 12 shows. I can't say enough to everybody who hung in there with me to do 12 consecutive shows. And even for me to do them on a Monday. So I'll be so glad to roll down there to my office and be like, yes, I can take a break.
All right.
Got stuff to do in the office.
And
but we want to kind of go back to what's going to happen in the days ahead, because we know that it's not going to end just on Tuesday, because we're going to probably spend the rest of the week trying to make sure that all the ballots are in, all the ballots have been counted, those who, voted through a box or went to the polling station or did absentee or mailed theirs in. Do you have something in place for like the next, let's say, 30 days or so?
Sure. So I'm just going to preface that, Dr. Kimberly, with I'm not an election expert. I'm here as a representative of the police department and talking about safety, how to go through the day safe, and what safeguards we have in place for things like that, maybe some civil unrest or things like that. So I am not all knowing on election day. I would put that right out there. The city clerk is responsible for election day and the process. So I would defer to that office for specifics questions regarding the election. But I would like to talk first of all, before we talk about next week or next month, can we talk about today for a little bit about?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Because I think that will kind of set the stage for where we go from there, right? So today specifically, I can tell you that the polls opened at 7 this morning, and we have not had any problems whatsoever. We've gotten 2 calls so far to polling locations, and both of them. What's that?
I said, what?
Oh yeah, we had 2 police calls to polling locations so far, and both of them were reference a tent that had set up with a DJ inside of it, and the people at the polling station were didn't like the disturbance of the music. There's want to have fun, right? But anyway, one didn't like the noise of the disturbance, or thought that they were partisan and trying to solicit voters. So that the 2 calls, we talked through it. They were nonpartisan. It was an organization that's just trying to encourage people to vote and lighten the experience, lighten the mood a little bit, make it a little bit more fun. So that was the only 2 calls that we got. So they were done. Their event was done at 11 anyway. So they both packed up and left. So those are the only 2 police calls. We haven't had any calls of disturbances, protests, intimidators, disturbing challengers, anything like that. So that's very encouraging, and we hope that continues through 8 o'clock. What we have done, you're talking about prevention, Dr. Kimberly, what we have done as a city is opened up an emergency operations center. That was opened up at 6 o'clock this morning. And for those of you that don't know what an emergency operations center is, it's an identified location where all the players that can come together to one location. So we are in immediate constant communication if something were to happen. So for instance, at the emergency operations center, there's going to be department heads from the police department, the fire department, public works, our communications department, the executive office, obviously the city clerk's office. So we're all together literally in the same room. We are married for 14 hours, and we have our feelers out there. We have the pulse of the ground. The city clerk's office is in constant communication with each of the polling supervisors at all 74 locations. So we get that feedback in real time. So we know if somebody showed up wearing, let's say they wore a MAGA hat and a Trump shirt, which is a big no-no. We can talk about that in a minute. But let's say they did that, we would know about that right away. It's not necessarily something that we as an emergency operations center or even a police department would do anything with right away. We would leave that to the election inspectors there on site to handle. But if they needed us, if something were to happen and they like, you know what, we have someone that's too disruptive or they're not following our rules or the guidance of us, that's when they would call us. They'd have immediate access to us through the Emergency Operations Center, and we could respond in that way. Or any of the departments that are in the EOC could immediately respond because we have that face-to-face interaction all day long. So the Emergency Operations Center is the biggest point of defense in preventing anything from happening, because communication is key. Just like in any organization, in any process, if you don't have the communication, or if the communication breaks down, then your plan's going to break down. It's going to be going downhill. So that's the biggest thing that we did today, was opening up that Emergency Operations Center. And that's just on my side of it. From the city clerk's office, they've been working on this for months, if not years, to streamline this process and make sure all their election inspectors are trained properly, and they've gone through all the de-escalation so they can handle those frontline issues at each of the polling sites, which I'd love to get into if you guys are willing to have that conversation. Okay, fantastic. So from what I'm hearing and what we're seeing, some of the problems that the polling inspectors face, you talked about tension, Dave. The biggest problems that we've had at these polling locations is people being disruptive or being intimidating to our employees at the polling sites. For whatever reason, they're upset with.
We have a comment. Dr. Thurston said, this is really great. Everyone should feel safe when voting.
Absolutely. And that's our goal. That should be all of our goal here today. That's why we're having this conversation. I trust is because we want everyone to be able to vote today. We have 7.5 million people in Michigan. 45% of them have already voted prior to Election Day. We want those other 55% of the eligible voters to be able to vote today, to feel safe, to be safe. And we don't want our election employees or officials to feel intimidated. They should be able to feel safe in their work environment as well. So, but really that's the majority of the problems that we're having at the polling locations is our inspectors, our volunteers. Those are the ones that are feeling the brunt of people's frustrations. We will have an occasional protest or someone within the 100 feet rule that is trying to pass out propaganda or chants or whatever they might be doing. But the majority of the problem has been with intimidating or giving problems to our election inspectors. So really, I think
today you've heard that has occurred, but not to the level where you've needed to send in officers, or you're just saying that's what they prepare for.
That's what they prepare for, because historically, especially in 2020, that was the biggest problem that our polling locations faced, was people, voters, whether they were eligible voters or not eligible voters, giving issue to our not postal inspectors, our election inspectors. And so in trying to de-escalate those situations, people are frustrated. Maybe the lines were long. Maybe they found out that they're ineligible to vote for whatever reason. And that can be very frustrating. So really the focus of 2024 has been, my understanding has been, to properly train those inspectors and make sure that they're equipped to keep those polling locations safe, because we are not there. And we really hope that they can handle those problems, because, and we can get into it more, but there's a different feeling when you have a uniformed officer at a polling location, right? And not everyone's comfortable with that. So we need to respect that and respect that space and not make it an intimidating environment. So we have to educate and arm those election inspectors so that they can handle a majority of those instances and only call us when those de-escalation techniques are not working.
I had an opportunity yesterday to talk to a few folks from the one of the parties, and they're all excited in a lot of respects of the training that they received for today. And so they are prepared.
Yeah,
they are prepared.
I'm glad to hear that.
Got to do that investigative work before you come here and you start talking, because somebody will inbox me. But I did have an opportunity to talk to some of those folks yesterday, and they are extremely, excited about the training, and they're prepared. And I think maybe just a little bit, too much, the tension is there with the expectation that, oh my gosh, something's probably going to happen, but.
Yeah. But I'm glad that they do feel prepared, because if you say something's probably going to happen, or, I hope nothing happens, but you have to have a plan that something will happen. And then if it doesn't, great. But if you don't have a plan, or you're not properly trained ahead of time, you're just you're out there on a wish and a hope, and that's not good for anyone, right? So I'm glad that that the people that you talked to from that political party, that they felt that their training was good and that they feel prepared. I will say that in the research that I did prior to today, again, I'm not an election expert, but as far as the election inspectors and the challengers, they try to keep that pretty balanced, right? They try to keep each polling location balanced with the either Democrat or Republican, and they don't want it to be just one party that's working a polling site. They try to keep it as balanced as possible. Well, that's my understanding. It's not my experience.
Yeah, and I'm not an election expert, but I do play one on the internet. And to say that's actually a hat tip to Pat Draper. We won't talk about Pat, but she used to work at the health department and is fantastic in emergency response. But anyways, we had a coffee hour with a state legislator last winter, and we found out that in Michigan, to be a poll worker, you have to declare your party. You can't say I'm not part of a party, because to your point, Captain Williams, it's like, well, I'm not part of a party, but wink, wink, I really am. And so the idea to make sure we're balanced, you have to disclose, so we know, hey, this precinct has 20 Republicans or 20 Dems, and we got to get some other folks in here. So we do have as fair of an appearing process as possible, so people don't complain about the appearance. And then, of course, there's tons of safety checks. I mean, I know our clerk pretty well. He's always talking to us about accessibility issues, making sure that voting places, voting processes are all as accessible and inclusive as possible. But again, back to, and when I voted this morning, I'm old school, so I voted in person this morning, and there were the two election poll watchers, one from each party, and they were just sitting there staring at people, and all the poll workers were just delightful, and very welcoming and what have you, and but yeah, they're there to make sure, and if there was a challenge, then they both go up, and again, though, they also are trained to be as diplomatic, however, as clear as possible to say, wait a minute, I think that long-haired guy already came through the line. Through the line. Now, babe. You can't hide the ponytail. And so
getting pretty long there.
I'm just going to say, we might have back in the old days trick-or-treated with multiple costumes to hit those houses that had the best treats. But that's a shenanigan. That's not illegal. And so voting more than once is illegal. And voting, if you're not registered and all of that stuff. But we'll talk more about that in the coming years as we get ready, because 2026 we'll be back at it again with a big general election. Michigan, the governor is going to be the top race in Michigan, and. But back to today. So really,
but I have a question for you. A couple of things though. For you, Dave.
Me?
Yep. You're the historian. So in the history of voting here in West Michigan, have you seen it, or just not even in West Michigan, when we look at the pulse of the country and what they're anticipating with this election, has it ever been this way before?
It's funny you say that, because I was going to do this high tech. I shared this picture with a friend of mine. This is from the 1870s. It's two guys fighting over a ballot box that's like, stop the fraud, from the 1870s. And
history repeats itself, huh?
And yeah, and I remember once Tim Skubek, great reporter for Michigan Public Radio, or he's been out there for a long time. And he gave this presentation talking about how divided we are, and that was 20 years ago. But I pointed out that Thomas Jefferson, our third president, and John Adams, our second president, were best of buds until they started running for office. And like the things that their allies said about the other candidate makes anything that a current presidential candidate has said about the other side seem tame. I mean, They said terrible. Really? John Adams was, he was just a lover of the king, and he was. The stuff that they used to say about each other. The good news was you had to own a printing press to get the word out. Now, anybody with one of these can get a viral video. Exactly. Everybody has a printing press, which I'm old school, so I don't enjoy that. I wish we had nothing against MLive, but it's not the Grand Rapids Press of 20 years ago when you had reporters who would go out and you'd have a whole section in, the paper 2 Sundays ago that would have been questions from each candidate. And
I remember that.
Yeah.
And we would sit around as a family. We would sit around as a family and look at it and read it. And it'd be this big discussion about who's going to, do what. And the closest that anybody has come to even talking about those days was Liz Cheney. I got an opportunity to see her. I was front row VIP. I'm just saying, shameless plug. Shameless plug.
Cheer from the audience.
Yes. So it was she and Alyssa Slotkin together. First of all, they talked about their experience on the day of insurrection, that they both were in the White House when it happened, and about them barricading themselves in. That's why this show was so important to me, because when they started talking about that, it got me right in here. And it just, how everybody just kind of came together. They said nobody had eaten all day, and it was almost 11:30 at night. They were still in there. No one could leave. And how somebody went down and raided all of the vending machines and had brought it up for everybody to eat. And Slotkin said she got one sleeve of popcorn, and she looked over and she saw Cheney and she gave her the popcorn. And as they say, the rest was history. That here it is, a Democrat gave a Republican, something to eat after they had just gone through this experience together. And just to hear them talk about it, I was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? And, some of the things that have been put in place, since then. And that's why this was important to me. When I heard their story, we had already trying to figure out a way, for you to come on and do something, but then, to hear what their experience was. And at that point, it wasn't about Democrat or Republican, but it was like, how are we all going to survive this day, this afternoon, and then going into the night hour that they were still there. Here it is 11:30. So I just was like, ugh.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this is what happens to our hours, Captain Williams. They start disappearing way too fast. So we're 45 minutes in, folks. And if just a couple of quick questions, because again, this is, recent history. So what happens to your job when, let's say, a presidential candidate decides to have a rally in a park, or a presidential candidate comes at 1 a.m. on election day, and I'll just leave the question there, and we'll have a bunch of follow-ups. So how does your normal day get maybe turned upside down?
So every 4 years, our agency gets turned upside down. Dr. Kimberly, you mentioned it earlier, Michigan's a swing state. Grand Rapids and Kent County specifically has been a very strategic focus for both
Yes.
both campaigns, and we've had I think 10 or 12 maybe visits from either the president, vice president, nominees, and it has actually turned our city upside down when they're here. It is all hands on deck. We might get we maybe get a week notice from the Secret Service that they're coming, and it will be a to be determined, right? Like the site is to be determined,
Yes.
when they're arriving is to be determined, or how many different motorcades that there are, or if they're even coming or not. Are they bringing their families? And so there's so much planning that goes into it, and it changes. It's very iterative. It's changing constantly, several times a day, at a minimum. So what that means for us, we have 270.
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing. It's just like
it's comical.
there's so much planning, and they give you 7 days notice, maybe
at best. Sometimes it's 3 days. So logistically speaking, Dave, what it takes, we're talking hundreds of bodies from police, fire, AMS, public works, our executive team and administration, just mobile field force, the bike team, because we have to be preventative, right? Hopefully nothing happens, and thank goodness nothing did for the last several months. But we were prepared. I tell you what, we were prepared.
You guys were excellent. I mean, when Harris came and it was at Riverside Park, we can say that now, but they didn't tell us until about 13 hours before where it was going to be. So we had like 13 hours.
Very strategic. The Secret Service keeps all of that close to them. And the reason being is that they don't want to give anyone an advantage to maybe set up a sniper shot, or to scope out the location ahead of time, or plant a bomb, something like that. I know that sounds extreme, but that's the world they live in.
I can't even take in my speaker. I always, everybody knows me that I play my music all the time. That's my dog, keeps me calm. So I'm always riding around with my speaker, my phone. And they just looked at me. We don't know if you're going to be able to take the speaker. And I said, but I'm playing nice music. I'm a veteran. I'm not going to try to, mess up with my commander in chief. We don't do that. And they were like, yep, we don't trust nobody.
Nobody, right?
We don't trust nobody.
You can't take anything in. So when we went,
I ended up having to take the speaker back to the ADA station. They held on to it. They put it in a bag and with some other things, and then they put it in a secured location because it couldn't even be in that particular location. They were like, well, can you go back and put it in your car? I said, this is my car. And I turned around and I said, see, it's my Bentley. They all just thought that was just hilarious. But to be able to see all of the police department, I'm at so many different vantage points, and to see them on bicycles, on motorcycles, in the cars, walking around, and then the number of Secret Service that they had flown in or brought in as a team. They were even infiltrated into the crowd. So you might turn and think that you're looking at a regular person, and then you find out, oh no, they got a little thing in their ear, Secret Service. You're like, oh, okay. I even had someone from the headquarters like right next to me, one on either side, because I was right at the stage.
Okay.
I had, the front row seat because I come with my own seat, so I just rolled my little
But then, so Vice President Harris was in GR on the 18th of October. Again, was at 1:00 this morning. Mr. Trump was here. And so, like, how many GRPS officers are like on duty in each of those instances? Do you have like our state police, Kentwood Sheriff, are like you borrowing sworn officers from other places? And then, of course, then how many, like, did they have a whole plane load of Secret Service guys and gals that show up? Because
Yes.
I heard I have a friend that works at the JW, and the vice president stayed at the JW the night before the rally, and they guarded every entrance to that hotel. So how
Amazing.
how does this work, and who's really in charge?
The Secret Service is in charge. They send ultimately they are. The Secret Service are in charge. They tell us what's going to happen, and we're expected to just accommodate their plans, whatever that might be. So I don't have an exact number for the Secret Service. I can speak. I mean, it's in the dozens each instance, at least at a minimum.
I saw at least, I counted at least 15. And then there was a separate person with the team that is just the dog. They have two people for the dog handler. So there is a dog, and the dog is on their team that comes in. So
yes,
I
and they're
saw 15
smelling.
plus the two. That's 17 I saw.
Yeah, you talked about sitting in the front row. They do have Secret Service bomb dogs that will just smell the front row, and they usually smell the entrance to scan each person as they're coming in, and that's all they're smelling for is for an incendiary device or a bomb. But that's the Secret Service. So you talked about the law enforcement agencies, the local help, Dave. Last night we had 81 Grand Rapids officers working. The event alone. That's aside from the regular work on the road and answering calls for service. So we had 81 Grand Rapids police officers assigned to Van Andel Arena last night. And then we had an additional 50 outside agency officers. All the agencies you mentioned, every single agency in Kent County was here, including the state police. I think literally every single agency, it gave us at least a couple officers, and there were around 50 of them. Some of them gave 1 or 2 officers, which is great because that's all they could do. Other larger agencies gave us an entire team or a bike squad. So it's really all hands on deck. They know that Grand Rapids is the main focus of all of these dignitaries coming to West Michigan. And so whenever we have an incident, or not incident, but an event like that, they're more than eager to help. And they did. They came out in droves, which is amazing. So in all, we had about 150 law enforcement officers at Van Andel Arena and around the downtown, that immediate area where the line is, because not only do we have to guard the president, obviously that's Secret Service job, but we have to guard the location where he's coming, or the vice president, or whoever's coming. But we also have 10,000 people in line that we have to make sure that they're safe, whether it's from vehicular traffic or people that might be disorderly downtown that's intimidating the line, protesters, counter protesters. You have medical calls. Maybe it's hot and they don't have enough liquids. So medical calls, things like that, things that people don't realize that goes into all this planning. But there's a lot of people, not just one person that comes to town. You got all the 10 to 15,000 people that come to see that person that we also are here to protect and keep safe. So I went to bed at 4 a.m. this morning. People were probably later than me because they did a lot of the tear down work and making sure everything was put away. So it was a long night for every law enforcement agency, or really anyone that assisted with that, because there were EMS, fire, public works, again, all involved in that incident. So it was a late night. Yeah,
it was nice all the way around. And from Vice President Harris's view, she could see a couple of the folks that were falling out, and so she started calling out for EMS to come and help folks when she was here. The same thing when Tim Waltz came. There were folks that were watching, and as people were just kind of like dropping like flies, it was just whew.
Well, people are in line for 5, 6, 7, maybe 12 or 15 hours because they want to get a good seat. And they don't have enough liquids, they're not resting properly, not enough food. So medical calls has been the number one call problem that we've had at these incidents. Right. Thank goodness we haven't had any protests, no counter protests. It's been beautiful. It is a absolute picture perfect democracy when you can have a dignitary come to town. People that support him or her can come and watch and cheer, whatever, and have no issues, but a few medical calls, nothing serious, fortunately, just some dehydration and exhaustion. So it was a long 3 months, and I'm really, really glad it's almost over, but it was beautiful how seamless it went.
Yeah. How many sworn officers?
Go. I'm just do this real quick before the people go. We want to say thank you to Thurston, Autumn Harpins, David Wickstrom, Astro Star. Thank you. I see your love and your hearts up here. And for those of you who have been putting all the hearts and the likes as the conversation has been going. And if you are watching via GRTV 25, today is Tuesday, Election Day, the 5th of November, 2024 presidential election. And we are excited we have today with us Captain Cathy Williams of the Grand Rapids Police Department, as she's been talking about the different things that have been in place, not just for today, but that has been in place since this process has started. I think they really started courting about 5-6 months ago, and it's really ramped up in the last 90 days. And so we are most grateful that there hasn't been a lot of instances, other than every time that I've gone, there have been people who have been passed out because no, they haven't been doing what they needed to do. And the lines have definitely been long. And I really want to say to all of the teams for making this an accessible event. I have come every time in my big Bentley, and especially when Waltz came, I appreciated it. It was at the Grand Rapids Public Museum, and all I did, there were thousands of folks that were lined up going all the way back to the Grand Valley campus. I just wheeled all the way up front to the table, and I was like, my name is, they're like, we know who you are. You're Dr. Kimberly. And I'm like, yes. And they said, hold on one second. And I had a personal escort to take me straight in. And there was a section upstairs in the museum. And it was only 3 of us that were in that section. However, they all brought people, so it made it a lot larger. And then we were able to go into a separate auditorium there in the museum to see Walz and Governor Whitmer personally. They came in there. So that was really, really nice. It was nice even at the park and at the other venues, too many to name, even with Slotkin's team. They had the ADA down pat. And I even have this video I cannot wait to share. October 5th, the Lieutenant Governor came here for a private reception, and I was there, and it was not accessible. So the restaurant folks lifted me up all of these stairs and brought me upstairs to the venue. So I'm sitting there just nice and quiet, waiting. And as people were leaving, Lieutenant Governor says, so, hey, Doc, how are you getting down? Can I walk you to the elevator? And I said, you can roll with me down these stairs. He goes, what's going on? I said, once again, you have a venue that is not accessible. He says, I take full responsibility for that. Please forgive me. I want to know how you're going to get down. However you're going to get down is how I'm going to get down. I said, well, you see this garbage bag on the table? He said, yes. I said, well, I'm going to put that on the stairs and I'm going to slide down on that garbage bag so I don't burn myself and get down all those stairs. Do you know that he got that on the top of the stairs with me, and he slid down all of those stairs with me, even pulled me on the garbage bag when we got to the landing so I can get down to the next set of stairs. And you'll love the picture because he's got a woman's purse on his arm as they're coming down.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Nice.
But I have to say that everyone has really tapped into being inclusive and tapping into disability advocates of Kent County to making sure that the venues have been accessible. And my experience, we're going to put this up here today, was phenomenal. I live in Byron Center, and here's the pin that I actually voted with, and it says, I voted. I saved it because when my candidates, all of them win, I can say this is the pin that I used to change history and to be a part of history. But what I love, this young lady I live in 68 West out here in Byron Center, and she lives in Byron Lakes. It's an apartment complex right across from us. And I'm wheeling down the street. She's waving at me, and I'm like, okay, do I know her? And I'm like, no, she doesn't look familiar. But she says to me, hey, I can cross the street with you because it's so much better when you cross the street with someone else, and it's a whole lot safer. I said, absolutely, we can cross the street together. And of course, she had on purple. And then I said, you know what? We talked about the candidates, we talked about voting, and we had some similar values, and just we're holding hands. Y'all see that? Mm-hmm. I know you said that your screen is kind of small, but that's black and white, able, disabled. I mean, we can start doing all the parallels if you want to, but as we've always said, in the 4 years that we have been doing this show is that we are the examples of how things should be. And that's the example right there.
Right
that we're together
on.
I love it. It's beautiful.
and that we're in Byron Center. And what I loved, my polling station was so funny. I had them all, we were all singing, "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" And everybody said to me, "We want you to be my neighbor." So we were singing, "Won't you be, please, won't you be my neighbor?" Welcome, folks. And everybody remembered me from midterms in 2022. They're like, "Yes, she was our candidate in 2022." So Dave, that did make me feel good. So that means they were probably out of the 15,363 folks that voted for me. I'm just saying.
Well, we're trying. That's all we can do. And yeah. So, our time is up. I got 1,000 more questions, Captain Williams. So we're going to have you back on in after the dust settles after the election. Sure. Hopefully there's a peaceful transition of power, as we like to say.
Right.
Yeah.
As we leave today, could I just end with a couple safety tips for today specifically?
Absolutely.
Our polling location. So first and foremost, when you go to vote in the next 3 hours, please leave your firearms at home. There's a reason that most polling locations are at churches and schools, and that's because they're a weapons-free zone. So there's no open carry, there's no concealed carry in churches, in schools, unless you're a very few exempt people. But for the most part, the general rule, just don't bring your guns to polling stations. So that's the first and foremost. Secondly, we talked about wearing our Harris shirts or our Trump shirts. Please don't wear any propaganda to the polling locations. The election officials will ask you to take it off or turn it inside out. There's no need to discuss in line your polling or your voting stance. It's your business, not anyone else's. So if you're inside that 100 feet from the front door, please refrain from sharing your views, trying to solicit votes or sway somebody. It's your business only. So again, stay outside that 100 feet if you do wish to wear those clothes or hold a sign. Every polling location will have literal tape on the ground, and that signifies the 100 feet, and that is the law. So if you're going to do those things, please be outside that 100 feet. So no weapons. And then lastly, cell phones. You may have cell phones at these polling sites, but there are certain rules that you need to abide by. So you can take a selfie. Some of them have selfie stations where there's a backdrop. You can say, "I voted," with your selfie, and that's cool. That's great. And then you can also use your cell phone when you're voting to look up candidate information. So let's say there's 3 people I can choose from. I don't really know much about them. I can use my cell phone to research these candidates. But that's pretty much it. You're not allowed to video record people voting or other people in line. No pictures of other people. Certainly, you cannot take pictures of the ballot or anyone else's ballot. So please be respectful of cell phone usage at the polling locations. If you follow those 3 things, most headaches are gonna, they're gonna be prevented. So we ask that you follow those 3 rules, and hopefully the rest of the 3.5 million people get out there and vote today, and they do it safely, and we have no further issues. And I'll be in the EOC with you till midnight tonight.
Oh my goodness. We appreciate you. We do have a show scheduled. I think that we talked about, we were going to get some other folks other than yourself, but out of the police department, about those persons who have disabilities and how the police officers interact with them, and then having the ride-alongs is what I think we had talked about doing a show later.
I look forward to the conversation.
So
thank you for having me on today.
Thank you for taking the time on this very busy day and very busy time. So
it's an exciting day.
Keep it peaceful out there and vote.
Thank you, Heidi DeVries. I see your comment. She says her polling place was busier than heck, but everyone was very well behaved. I hope you were.
Oh, thank you,
guys. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you. And hopefully you guys got all the tips. And on yesterday, I hope for today, we got a viewer a ride to the polls for today. So we're really excited about that. And we appreciate our person from yesterday, Miss Shanae Watson Whitaker. So we will see you guys on next week. Y'all be safe and behave.